Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of Freedom Link Radio. I'm Joe Joseph for this 20th of March, 2012. Alongside me is Tim Watts, newsfocus.org and the American Truth Network.com. Uncle Tim.
Hey, Joe.
It was a really cool thing. Clyde Lewis had us on his program last night, Ground Zero, out of Portland, Oregon. What was that, the station, Tim?
KXL. They're a heritage station. They've been there for years. So big station, and thanks to Clyde for having us on. Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, what a fantastic experience it was. And that, honestly, that's the first time I think I've ever heard like a roundtable discussion on radio before like that. I mean, we have it a lot on internet radio, but not on terrestrial radio. I very seldomly, if ever, do I ever hear like a serious discussion going about such an important topic,
Yeah, and the few callers that called in that might have been just a little out there, he set straight right away. It was pretty cool, he was very, up on the topic, and it was just very fun to be able to be around someone that understood the issue,
Yeah, and good chat room too as well. Very focused and kind of plugged in. So it was a good experience all around. So I'd like to thank Clyde for having us on his program, and heck, anytime he wants to come on, Tim,
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I mean, just a class act. Honest to God, a class act. But tonight, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I want to get into this latest election fraud out of Illinois. Now, we just had the Illinois primaries where Mitt Romney pretty much just thumped everybody, right? Well, as it turns out, last night, Sean from SGT Report, and you guys may know him as SGT Bull 07 on YouTube, came out with a video where he screenshotted ABC7, their website, which already had the results of the Illinois primaries 24 hours before it happened. And in it, it had Santorum at 32% with 987,463 votes. And Romney at second, 29%, 919,993 votes. And down the list, they had Gingrich at 28%, and then they had Paul at 3%.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, which was, an absolute travesty. What was more surprising was that all the U.S. House races were also there and predicted or just laid out there. And after an hour, it was pulled. So don't know what went on there, but I can say that this is just yet another example of the rampant voter fraud that's just going crazy in this country. And my problem is, Tim, is, I always ask, where's the outrage? But I have to ask another question. Do people love dictatorship? Because I'm starting to think so.
Taste it for a little bit, folks, and yeah, you'll find out, And I'm sure this audience, knows a lot better. But, guy, some of those people out there, it's almost, I know you say it facetiously, Joe, but it can be a legitimate question because it's like, when are you people going to wake up? Hello, what part of this are you not connecting?
Right. Well, I mean, let me tell you this. I'm very encouraged because in the past week, I've had more people make themselves aware of what's going on, and now they're really starting to pay attention. A lot of my coworkers that, heck, 2 years ago, they were, calling me tinfoil hat boy and everything, all that kind of stuff. And that's all well and good. But as time goes on and you start nailing this stuff, and then they start to say, well, wow, how does he know all this? And, it's funny because it starts affecting them in their lives. When you try to tell them what it is that's going on, and they start seeing it, they start living it, next thing you know, boom, there it is. The light goes on. Well, it also happened to my folks. They woke up.
That's
And I mean,
awesome.
that is, it's something that I never thought would happen, first of all, because there's just certain things or certain realities that they accepted that, it's not true. And you know what it was, Tim, that was really the tipping point was Sheriff Arpaio.
Really?
Yeah. Sheriff Arpaio was he came out and said that it's one of the biggest cover-ups since Watergate. And he's just surprised that the mainstream media just totally blew him off. And I did a podcast that's coming out tomorrow. Popeye and I did a podcast for the Intel Hub News Brief, and we covered this. But I'll say the same thing that I said on the news brief. Sheriff Joe, join the club. I mean, really, join the club.
Poor, sweet, stupid Sheriff Joe.
And instead of complaining about it, and he says, there are very few options I have. And I guess if you're thinking inside the box, yes, you're right. Okay, what do I do? Oh, can I go to Eric Holder and try and get justice from the Attorney General's office?
Good rock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd rather bash my head in with a claw hammer, But I will say this. You could go at a state level and try and have him removed from every ballot in the 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, he's ineligible. He hasn't proven that he's a citizen. And we all know that can't be, regardless of the fact that his birth certificate's a fraud or a phony. His father's an African. So, I mean, I just don't get it. You can't. Your father's not an American citizen, So, I mean, regardless, I kind of don't like the fact that they're focusing on the wrong thing. It's quite simple. Even if they do find a real birth certificate,
mm-hmm.
because the dad's not a natural born U.S. citizen, sorry, man, you're sunk. And to that end, technically, Mitt Romney couldn't run for president because his father isn't a natural born citizen.
Well, considering the country's made up of immigrants, I always was under the impression, probably mistakenly, but it was just that you, the candidate, had to be the one that was natural born in the United States. And
there's a definition of it, and I'll have to pull the old link out. But your parents have to be natural citizens as well.
Interesting.
That's just for the presidency, nothing else. So that's just one of those things. And I asked the same question, Tim, because I was like, well, Thomas Jefferson was British at one point in time, if I remember right. I think we all kind of were in that time period. So how could they make a rule like that? But it's there.
Here's the whole thing, though, then about that, and I mentioned this a little bit last night, but if this whole thing revolves around just a simple piece of paper, it's like, wow, how it could go on so long unless they wanted it to go on this long. Because again, the CIA, they're in the business of making documents. I mean, they want to make a birth certificate or a driver's license. I mean, I tell you what, you get the good stuff from the CIA. But, it's just amazing to see this go on this long. But, if it wakes more people up, so be it. We'll use it.
Absolutely. Folks, we got so much left to go through. I'm going to be going through some news for the rest of the hour number one. And then hour number two, Angie comes on. She's got some things to say to some critics about this martial law plan that the government came out with. So sit tight, don't go away. We'll be right back. Email address is thefreedomlink at centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink at centurylink.net. And I'd like to give a shout out to somebody that always sends me some great tips, Gene Stoner. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do and sending me such great information. Gene was one of the people that actually got me the executive order that Obama put out the day before natural resource, one that had to do with the strong communities, strong cities. And that was a big fat bucket of poo to go along with it. I mean, Tim, it's funny how fast things are really ratcheting up.
You can't keep up.
It's just it's like static electricity in the air,
Yeah.
And it's weird because as much as I think that, oh man, it's bad. We're going to see something at any time here. They just seem to keep stringing it along. And I don't, sometimes I wonder if it's psychological, if they do this crap on purpose just to kind of string us out and occupy us to the point where we're pulling our hair out.
Well, or weighing their options because, again, I totally entertain the fact that they have more than one card on the table that they're playing. And it's not just the Iran card. It's not just the economy. I think, they've got a couple things. I think, different ways they'd like to see things go. And as any well-oiled machine is, they have a fallback plan. And they know that if they can't achieve this, by these means, then, okay, by all means, we fall back to plan B or plan C. So, they may be just kind of meeting this all out right now and trying to figure out which is the best one to do. Okay, implement plan Z.
Yeah, man, but
I don't know.
Keep it
but
up.
It's you can't keep up with it.
Oh.
And as you and I were talking about earlier, I mean, what's next? Joe and I were, sitting here trying to guess. I mean, all the things they've done to us. And it's like, all right, what haven't they done yet that they could take away that they haven't? Because, I mean, at this point, it should be easy. They've really whittled just about everything away.
Well, you'd think that. But, I mean, in all honesty, dude, it never happens the way that we think. It never does. And that's the crappy thing about that game is that you can speculate from now until the cows come home, but it's not worth a damn. Because it never happens the way you envision it. Just never.
No.
Something out of left field totally takes you by surprise. And you'd think they'd run out of options by now, but good Lord, man. I mean, it's crazy. Like, for example, who the hell would have thought that Fukushima would have happened and wreaked so much havoc? Who would have thought that the Gulf oil catastrophe would have happened the way it did? Well, if you watched the movie Knowing, you might have known. But that's what I'm talking about is these events happen that change things drastically, but you'd never in a million years think that would have been one of these game-changing events. So I don't know, man. I just feel like I feel more and more like time is short and that we really need to ratchet up our activism to
I do too.
To really slam this home because as much as they are afraid of us, you see their game. They're not backing off. They're not sitting on their hands, man. It's full court press.
Well, where do you go from their position? You've pulled off so many crimes to get here along the way. I mean, you either go forward or, you cut bait and quit. And, they're not going to do that. They're just going to keep on going. I mean, they've come this far.
I mean, to us, it's us versus them. And, to them, it's them versus us. And it's just a giant freaking, I mean, you're talking a battle of good versus evil.
What bill was that we were reading just a couple of weeks ago where they were, referring to us as animals? I mean, they did speak about the human form, but then what was it? And all other animals or something like that. The legalese was. Right. Yeah, I just bring that up because you mentioned the no regard, and they have no regard for us.
Oh, so. Right, yeah, and that was oh man, Alfred Addisk that did that. That came up with that defense that they consider us animals in their eyes. We're lowly.
That was it.
Yeah, we're scum, and that's all right. They may win the day, but they're not going to win the war, if you know what I mean. And it's funny. We were talking today at work. Matter of fact, some of the military guys that I run into from time to time. The one thing that they're all pretty much in unison about is there's 800 million guns in this country. You know,
Right. Yeah.
that's a lot. So if you do have some sort of breakdown or catastrophe, like whether it be economic, it just seems like that executive order, all these executive orders that are being written are money driven. You know, like let's just say the United States debt gets downgraded to junk status, or we default on our debt. Well, if we default on our debt, import export comes to a very, very drastic drop. I mean, it just stops pretty much dead.
Mm-hmm.
And the country has to live within its means. Well, we've sold off pretty much our entire manufacturing base. I mean, we're a service-based economy now. We used to be manufacturing based, but we've sent all that overseas.
Yeah.
So all that stuff would have to be reestablished. So that, you know, the government says, well, fine, then we'll have to nationalize all this stuff to get it going again, because nobody's going to have the resources to retool everything.
I don't totally buy that excuse, you know, because, you know, the things that we lost, a lot of those factories are still there. They're just boarded up, for crying out loud.
The audio industry is a good example of that, because they do a lot of that. You know, well, they'll do a lot of that. They shutter factories. That doesn't mean they go away. They shutter. Sometimes they're shuttered for 10 years, but they open them right back up when the economy picks up and they're selling more cars. So
yeah, it's like an old Army or Air Force base. They realize there's still a value there. They may close it up, but
and to be honest with you, man, I don't put it past. I think as a people, the United States has probably the best capacity to recover from something like that. But the problem is the cancer that exists comes and spawns from the tumor that is Washington, D.C. You know, so we'd have to rid the body of the cancer before we can heal. And that's the thing is, I swear to you, man, they're driving this thing into the ground. And I truly believe, and I'm speculating here again, folks, I truly believe that they're trying to crash the dollar and these European currencies simply to usher in a one world currency, a cashless currency that we've just seen being instituted in Sweden.
I absolutely agree.
Are they the California of the world? You know? What happens in California all of a sudden happens everywhere else. That's what they say.
You know, I wrote this article last, it was late summer, early fall, about the fact that, to me, this looked like an engineered collapse. That, you know, this whole thing has been orchestrated on purpose. And at the time, I got a few people that kind of question, my sanity over writing such an article. But I said, there's logic here. I mean, because they went, 180 degrees away from what should have been the proper response. When you see that happen, well, you realize something's up. So, well, break is coming up, so we'll continue that thought after the break.
Absolutely. We're also going to talk about the IRS forming SWAT teams to come after tax dodgers. All that and more. Angie coming up, hour number 2. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
Great radio to listen to during the day at work. Don't forget to check out the Edge program with Mr. John Stokes Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. It's Freedom Link Radio with Joe Joseph and Tim Watts, and talking tonight some more about, a lot of things, but in particular the martial law plan that came down from the White House over the weekend, that Angie, Joe's wife, was good enough to ferret out. And we all had a field day on Saturday, going through that document, going, oh, my gosh, look at this. Look at this. And, pretty soon, it became evident that we needed to do a podcast and do it pretty quick and get it up onto the internet because Angie's pretty good at finding stuff. So this is like every 3-4 months, Angie. We're going to hold you to. I'm expecting like by next June this coming June you'll have the next big scoop for Orion here. But a lot of fun again with Clyde last night on Oh, for crying out loud! Think of the name now. The radio show that we were on last night with Clive. I can't remember the freaking guy's name, Joe, to save my life.
What's the name?
Clyde.
Oh, it was Clyde Lewis.
Clyde Lewis. Yeah, geez, my apologies.
Lewis, yes.
My apologies, Clyde. Geez, that's terrible.
You're awful.
But, yeah, we're tired from being up all night anyway. So
yeah. It was, that's the one thing about Pacific time when you're on the East Coast. Man, it's rough. It's not so much the same for them. Because if they have to do East Coast time, well, hell, that's okay. Midnight to them or midnight to us is 9 o'clock to them. That's all right. But to us, woo.
Yeah, I thought it was bad for me, but for you guys, yeah, you're East Coast time. So that was a really late night last night.
Yeah, it sure was,
But again, thank you, Clyde Lewis, for having us on. And
yeah. Fantastic opportunity. Guys, one thing I want to make you aware of is about this IRS. The IRS is forming SWAT teams to catch these tax evaders. Woo! Says the U.S. Internal Revenue Service is staffing up with high-powered talent to crack down on companies shifting profits from country to country to lower their tax bills, a strategy the agency has targeted before with only limited success. The IRS showed its elevated concern on the issue known as transfer pricing last May by hiring Samuel Maruka to fill the newly created post of Transfer Pricing Director. Yes. And so they're going after these companies that are being ruthless and everything else, but they also say that they're underpaid and outgunned. Federal agencies often struggle to keep up with higher paid private sector professionals. The IRS is no exception, and there's some skepticisms about Maruka's chances of bringing these tax evaders to justice. It's like, geez. The $64,000 question is, what will we be able to do, and will they have enough resources to change the game? It's like, what game are we trying to change? Last time I checked, man, the IRS is pretty ruthless.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell do they need SWAT teams for?
What are they taking, like the 1033 program to the IRS now?
Yes, yeah, exactly right. Well, that's what they're saying is that there's private companies that do this stuff, and now they want to do more along the lines of SWAT. Yeah. We've seen this too with the Department of Education. Now, everybody knows that Obama nationalized the student loan program in the country, and now all of the student loans go through the federal government. Now, they're managed by places like Sallie Mae or banking institutions, but they're not – the money doesn't come from there. It comes actually directly from the federal government. So when you pay your money back, you're actually paying the U.S. Department of Education. And there's been numerous orders by the Department of Education for like militarized shotguns and body armor, and all in the name of, well, hell, they're going to raid your butt. If you don't pay, if you're not up to snuff on your student loans, watch out. You may be getting a knock on the door.
You see, I've already heard about that happening, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
That people have, it's been going on around America. And when I first heard you, open up with this story, that's what I'm thinking about. And I know up in the top it mentioned about, going after some businesses, but I really, really would like to see how many top 500,
exactly.
Fortune 500 companies they go after that, because
they're all in cahoots with one another.
Yeah, but I don't know if you ever read the 2008 GAO report. I've probably brought it up before, but if you ever get a chance, look it up on the internet, 2008 GAO report, and there's probably 3 or 4 of them that year, or maybe a couple at the least, but nevertheless, you'll find it. And it talks about the fact that there's like, good gosh, 63 to almost 70% of U.S. companies don't pay a frickin' dime.
Yeah.
And, tax. And in the same way, almost for all the international companies. And that adds up to like $2.5 trillion, that's just missed revenue. And so, yeah, go after those guys, knock yourself out. That would be really cool. I mean, remember that list we were supposed to get from the Bank of Switzerland? Well, I mean, geez,
whatever happened with that?
Yeah, exactly. For all those people that were hiding money.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though, man? They wouldn't have to do it if our country didn't stray so far from what the founding fathers intended. We fought a revolution over a 3% tax. 3%. That's what we fought a revolution over.
We're stingy.
I mean, seriously. And look at us now.
Yeah.
This is bad. This is bad. You know, during the 50s, after World War II, the tax rate on high-income people, the top tax bracket, was 90%.
Yeah, isn't that incredible?
I mean, it's hard to fathom that. And now I think, what is it, like 34.6 or something like that?
Oh no, I think Bush lowered that down to like, I want to say 15% or something. I mean, the only one that was up in the 30s was Clinton. He was taxing them at 34, 36, top end 39, but I think right around 34 or 36%. And that's when, the country started to prosper again. And by golly, we were certainly prosperous in the 60s when they were taxing them at 90%. But, whoo, man, I think I saw that figure in Capitalism, a Love Story. They threw that figure out there. And, geez, I almost fell over in my movie chair. I thought I didn't realize it was that much. So I don't know what they're complaining about, a meager 36%. But I'm almost certain, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that didn't Bush cut that down to like 17 or 15%?
Yeah, I'm not too up to snuff on that. All I do know is that that as of now, I mean, we pay more in taxes. The hell with the income tax. That's one thing. I mean, and it's an absolute illegal, unconstitutional tax. But everything we take is tax. It's the gasoline tax, property tax, sales tax. You go to a restaurant, there's restaurant tax. I mean, we could go on all day and find a whole slew of taxes that we pay. Hell, when you die, normally the estate tax is 55%. 55% of what you earned and made during your lifetime that you want to leave to your kids and your posterity, right? Nope. 55% goes back to Uncle Sam.
Well, that's for that's for a certain mega wealthy.
But does it matter?
Well, it doesn't affect a whole lot of people, I guess, is what I'm thinking. It's that not even the 1%, that 0.5% that are in that, that Sam Walton League, or the others like that have that much money.
But I mean, but do you see what I'm saying though? That's not what this country was founded on. That kind of principle, to where your labor, you get paid, or whatever you get for your labor, for your time, for providing a service, for doing something. That's not something that they should be able to take away from you, even if you die. That goes to whoever you want it to go to.
Now, the inheritance tax, the way I've always understood it, and again, this is just the way I've seen it or had it explained to me, was that it was for the ultra rich, and it was for the sole purpose so that no family could become bigger than the state, because they saw that as a threat. And now we know that that's happened in this country. It happened with the Rockefellers. They became far bigger than the state in the 1800s. They had more money than they knew what to do with. It happened with the Rothschilds. So you can see, I don't know if it worked out for the best, Joe, but I know that was always the way it was explained to me, that it was to try to, keep the big money down so that it couldn't overcome the state. Yeah. Although it happened anyway. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, these are really perilous times, Tim. I mean, we're back to square one with companies. First of all, now we have oligarchies and monopolies and things of that nature where, we really need these congressmen, these non-representing representatives, to utilize the Sherman Antitrust Acts and go out and break these companies up, like especially big oil. Break them up. There's no reason why 4 companies rule the entire United States as far as oil is concerned. It's a cartel. It's crazy. Folks, last segment of our number one coming up. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Don't go away. Radio has to offer every Wednesday and Friday from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You can find Popeye and Down the Rabbit Hole, Popeye at federaljack.com, and again on Sundays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. So, Tim, Stars and Stripes is reporting that vet groups are suing the DOD and CIA over secret chemical tests on soldiers.
Wow, now that's a surprise.
Yes. Floored. I am taken aback by that. And it says 3 veteran groups are seeking class action status for a lawsuit they filed in 2009 against the Department of Defense, CIA, and the Army on behalf of thousands of soldiers who participated in research programs at Edgewood Arsenal and Fort Detrick. I mean, come on. First of all, you're active duty military and you get stationed at Fort Detrick, be scared. Be very scared, because
that's like having them send you to Plum Island.
Exactly. It's like, why are they feeding us cheese every day? Well, it's because you're a lab rat. That's why. But seriously, man, I mean, here's another sore spot for me is when the government thinks that they have so much power over you that they use you as a stick pin, like a doll or a test dummy. You know, how brazen of them to think that they can do that to another human being, you know?
And they do it all the time, too. It's just amazing. And they're doing it more so now, almost like, you know, commercially, because the stuff that gets released now by the FDA or that gets allowed, you just wouldn't have, you know, been able to hold the mustard of testing, like, say, maybe back in the 70s when things were a little more stringent. But now it's like they let stuff go, you know, and people die and they find out, oh, okay, that wasn't so good, and they call it off the market. But, you know, there's testing that way, too. So, yeah, they do test on us directly, but then they also do this stuff where they just kind of slack up commercially on the big pharma stuff. And, I mean, that's testing for all intents and purposes.
And it says the lawsuit alleges that chemical and biological weapons were tested on soldiers that the military failed to provide follow-up care for the symptoms they developed, and that nearly all disability claims related to the test have been denied. I mean, what garbage. How – it's just evil, man. It's evil. It's absolute I can't believe it. I mean, seriously, CNN reported about these tests earlier this month, prompting some of the soldiers to share their experiences with the network. One was given sarin gas and its antidotes, along with other injections that remain a mystery, and later found to have damage to his heart. Another developed Parkinson's disease that he blames on the numerous injections and pills he was given at Edgewood, and he was never told what they contained. And then I think about, when I hear this, I think about the AMA and talking about mandatory vaccinations. You know? Oh, well, let's do it by conscription, because 63 other countries throughout the world have military conscription. Yeah. So if they can do it, then we can do it for vaccine testing.
What an asinine argument. I mean, really, what an asinine argument.
But I mean, who the hell do these people think they are to think that they can do that to another human being, as if they have some sort of power over us? Mm-hmm. And then they have the ability, which I find absolutely impossible. For me, it's impossible. But can you imagine sticking a child with this stuff? You know?
Yeah, and they want to, don't they?
Yes, of course they do. They're the ones that came out and said, well, you know, I think it would be beneficial to have testing on children for the anthrax vaccine. Yeah, as a matter of fact, let's make it mandatory for them. I mean, really? Folks, if anybody doesn't know, and if there's any active duty military listening to the broadcast tonight and any vets out there, understand this. That anthrax vaccine is one of the major causes of Gulf War syndrome. I've got it. Hell, I can't remember. It's so hard to describe to you just what that does to you and how your brain just goes from, I mean, just 60 to 0 in like the blink of an eye. It's amazing. There was a point in time, Tim, where I didn't have to take a note. I didn't have to write any notes, nothing. I remembered everything.
Cracker Jack brain.
Awesome. And I remember the day it all changed.
But now he's as dumb as a stump, folks.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, man, I'm sharp as a cotton ball. But that's why I have Ange. And by the way, she's coming up hour number 2, folks. So you'll find out the brains behind the Freedom Link. I'm merely the mouth.
He's the brawn.
That's right. I'm the brawn. She's the brains.
There you go.
So anyway, that was interesting that they're doing that. So this lawsuit seeks no monetary damage, but would require the military to notify the test participants what chemicals they were exposed to, as well as the doses and methods of administration.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, I know. It would also require the federal government to provide health care for veterans suffering from diseases related to the tests. Now, here's the thing. It's like they can say whatever they want to say. I mean, what are they going to do? You think they're going to tell you the truth? When has the government ever told us the truth about anything? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't see them being very forthcoming with this,
No, and even if they do, even if they do, they'll say something just to say them. Oh, yeah,
sure.
Yeah, we tested this, that, and the other. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
there was this substance. It's not so bad. Don't worry, and they won't tell them about the other 5 that were.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Final article of hour number 1. This is from France 24 International News. IMF warns of oil risk for Iran. Apparently, the IMF is warning the governments of the world that this Iranian embargo on oil is going to cause fuel to spike another 30%. Oh, wonderful.
Whatever will the oil producers do with all that money?
Don't you ever notice that, Tim? How when the oil prices go or the gas prices go up, the profit margins just explode?
It's obscene right now already where it's at. I mean, it's perversely obscene. So to think that they're going to add another 30% on there, God, they should all rot in hell. Every one of them.
Oh, they will. Don't worry. Give them time. Give them time.
I mean, here's the other thing. Everything we do in this world is for what? Black gold, Texas tea.
Sure.
And for what? The combustion engine.
Right.
Archaic technology that we're clearly well beyond, but we don't exploit because somebody else owns the natural resources to, hold this not just the country, but the entire world down. I mean, think about if we gave up on oil long ago. Oh, my God.
I mean, Tesla had the technology. There's people that have made cars on water. You have wood gasifiers. There's all sorts of different technology you can use.
Hemp oil.
Hemp oil. There's all sorts of stuff you can use that would bypass that. And the other thing too is this this idea that it's fossil fuel. It has nothing to do with fossils.
What a joke.
Well, that's just it. And they do that to make it sound like it's a finite resource, meaning that, we've reached peak oil. So, that's all an excuse to jack the price up. Yeah. There's no shortage.
I never bought that when I was a kid. Fossil fuel.
It just doesn't make any sense, does it? It's like there would have to. How many freaking dinosaurs roam the earth?
I know.
You know what I mean?
They have to die in a big pile.
Holy crap! They've been. I think we've been. 10 times that number of dinosaurs have gone out my tailpipe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And no, it's not fossil fuel. It's abiotic, and you can check it out. There's plenty of evidence to support that it's a natural process of the earth to make this, to make oil. So, that's just something to research, find out. Fossil fuel was put into place. I think the Rockefellers came up with the term.
Yep.
And it was meant to deceive.
Everything they do is meant to deceive.
Exactly. Well, that's how the devil works, man. That's how the devil works, is deception. And it's time that we stand up to that devil and say, not today, sir, no more. I got your number. Now it's our turn. And we'll be victorious, folks. But we got to push. We got to get active. Hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 is on the way. Angie Joseph coming up on the Freedom Link Radio. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
The Anginator. Hey, folks, it's Freedom Link Radio with Joe Joseph and Tim Watts. And just a very quick reminder to check out the Orion Talk Radio website, www.oriontalkradio.com, where you can get our archives, go through the chat room and check out all the Orion gear. And it's all available on our website, oriontalkradio.com. And on Freedom Lake tonight, talking, we had Joe Joseph, as we always do for the first hour, but now we get the better half. Angie Joseph steps into the seat, and I always like it when Angie's in here because Angie looks so much better than Joe, and she smells so much nicer. Hi, Angie.
Hey, Tim.
So it was a good night last night. And again, kudos to you because you are the one that has uncovered, both of these big things. I mean, you and Joe, but you're the one that actually ferreted this stuff all out originally. The FEMA continuity of government plan, which was just a few months ago, that made a big, big furor over that. And then now this new executive order from Obama, which was the big scoop for the entire weekend. So kudos to you, Angie, for, pulling off two. It's like you're good for what? I'm figuring every 4 months a couple. So, before June, we're going to expect another big one.
It's just it's a side effect of my insomnia. Really.
Yeah, I know how that goes. You stay up at night and you start reading.
Yeah, I keep hearing a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it criticisms, but I'm hearing a lot of, downplaying of this executive order, especially on the mainstream media. I heard a piece that Hannity did tonight on it, and he had a couple of, I guess, professionals on to talk about it. And, there's this meme out there that this is just business as usual and it's not that big of a deal. One of his guests actually said that, Obama's not going to abuse this power. Listen, I don't even want him to have the ability to abuse it. I'm not too comfortable taking his word for it or anybody else. Nobody should have that kind of power.
And if not him, the guy that's going to come in office after him, I mean, for crying out loud.
Exactly. There just should not be that kind of power in one person's hands. And the truth of the matter is that, I'm not hearing criticisms about the content of the executive order. Nobody's saying, oh, people are getting, you are hearing people say, well, people are being hysterical and they're alarmist about it. Listen, this is one of those things that, requires that people be alarmed over it. And it's ridiculous to try to downplay it as if it's business as usual. It's not. All he did was update some previous executive orders. That much is true. He took a few of them and, kind of pulled pieces out of them and made some updates. But he did something that no other executive order or piece of legislation in the history of this country has ever done. And he has said that, he can institute this whole executive order and this system during peacetime. I think that he owes the American public an explanation about that.
That's the kicker for me, Angie. I mean, because through all of this, people can say, their argument is, well, that's typical wartime stuff. You have to fall back to extremes during, a time of war. So you do what you can do. But, you just hit upon it. It says right in the document. And that's the part that I couldn't get past. Wait a minute, peacetime? What the hell are you talking about peacetime for something like this? I mean, because this isn't just a little restructuring. This is a wholesale reorganizing of the United States.
Right. And it's, it says it repeatedly throughout the executive order. And there's just, look, I can understand the arguments that, people complain. There's this one comment or commenter on the YouTube video that Intel Hub posted with the podcast about it. And this one person said, well, people complain when the government's not prepared for things like during Katrina, but then when they do prepare for things, everyone has a problem with that too. No, I think that there should be a plan in place in the event of an emergency. And, there's absolutely justification to try to prepare in case, things were to go nuclear and all hell were to break loose. And I would even argue about some of the things they would want to do if, anything like that were to happen. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that they're talking about the worst case scenario, say, Washington, D.C. is hit with a nuke and, wipes out, say, just for argument's sake, even though they're never in one place at one time, all the congressmen and senators are dead, right?
That's kind of a win-win for us, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not going to comment on that. But so you could say, well, worst case scenario, he has to make plans for, considering he's the commander in chief and, has to delegate authority. Whatever. I'm not even going to argue those points. But when you say that you've got the authority to implement this kind of control during peacetime, everybody should have a problem with it. Everybody. It is a problem. There's just no justification as far as I'm concerned. And, it's the one thing about this executive order that no matter how many critics pop up, no matter how many people say this isn't a big deal, it's the one sticking point that when you bring it up, they have no choice but to cede to the point and say, yeah, that, we would like some further clarification about that. Well, then don't minimize it.
Yeah.
It's a big deal,
That anybody could read through this and actually miss what you spotted and what we all went through on Saturday afternoon. The key is, all these things that you're reading about, these general sweeping changes that are going to happen to the country, and as you read through it, you think, my God, under what horrible conditions are we going to do all this? What would push us to this? But then you see again those key words that these people somehow miss, that this can be done in peacetime. So, folks, that's what you got to be worried about. They do. Angie's right. You got to make, contingency plans and stuff like that. Our government always does. But the key on this one is, peacetime. For crying out loud. I don't know how they can possibly validate that.
Exactly. And, we also have to consider the fact that they are implementing martial law. This is turning into a police state. This country is becoming a police state. So many things have changed since September 11th. And they've successfully militarized the police forces in the country, which is a very, very dangerous thing to do. The military is trained to kill people and break things. You don't want your domestic peace officers being trained like the military. It's, this is why we're seeing, the increase in police brutality incidents and, just abuses of power, because that's what happens when you militarize peace officers. Yeah. They're no longer there to keep the peace. They're now there to kill people and break things. That's their job.
That 1033 program we had, that what we still have. Is outfitting these people with, military-style applications, military-style armament and weapons and
tanks. Tanks,
yeah.
LRAD devices, microwave weaponry. It's ridiculous.
And then now, a month or so ago, they're talking about, the DHS is thinking, well, maybe we should handle law enforcement in America. Oh, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Exactly. And it's always a dangerous thing when the government says that they're allowed to have weapons that the public is not. That was never intended in this country.
Well, hold that thought, Angie. We're at the break. It's Freedom Link Radio. We're talking with Angie Joseph. Heard each and every day on Orion News Talk Radio. We're pumping it out 24/7 for you, 365 days a year. News and views beyond the mainstream media, because quite frankly, we're not afraid of the truth. It's Freedom Link Radio with Joe Joseph and Tim Watts tonight. And Joe's better half, Angie Joseph, is with me in the studio right now. And we're talking about Obama's recent executive order, which is pretty much president take all. It's baffling, Angie, that some of the people have come back with some of the. I mean, I expected, the powers that be to kind of throw up a little flack there, but for a lot of people to read this bill and then miss that one key word in there, that this could all be done under peacetime.
Right. When what you have to do is you have to weigh this executive order against all of the other legislation that's been going through lately, all of the other demands Obama's made, like with the NDAA. He didn't want it to exclude American citizens. That was a direct order from him, that they add that in to the bill.
Yeah, but remember before he was trying to say, oh, no, I don't want that in there. You remember that whole pomp and circumstance and that crap, that whatever was going on, that song and dance where he was making a sign, I'm going to veto it. Yeah. I'm going to veto it. I don't want that in there. And then Carl Levin comes forth, and Carl, he admits and says, well, he's the one that wanted it in there.
Yeah, he outright lied about it. Just lied.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, which is, that's their job. They're all liars. But when you weigh this against the NDAA, you weigh this against, the creation of FEMA Corps and, just everything that's been going on. That document that Joe and I had talked about from fedbizops.org when they put out that contract, that bid contract.
The FEMA Continuity of Government Plan.
Right, for the continuity of government. One of the requirements was, as we've gone over before, that they establish the Blue Force Situational Awareness System in the United States. That's a battlefield technology.
Yep.
So we have to ask ourselves, why would they want that here? Who are they planning to have a war with in this country? And for those that don't know what it is, it's a system where the friendlies, the friendly troops have transponders that identify them as friendlies or Blue Force, and those that don't have transponders are identified as unfriendlies or Red Force. This is why they drop pamphlets in a war zone telling all the locals to get out of there before they start bombing the place, because if they're seen on the screen as anything but Blue Force, then they're open to be killed, bombed, whatever. So that that's a very troubling development, that they would want to incorporate that here. Now, at least outside of normal use, like airplanes have to have those transponders, of course. Mm-hmm. They have to be identified as a commercial aircraft or whatnot. But there's just no logical reason, as far as I'm concerned, to have that kind of a system here in this country. And it's a dangerous development. It's one that requires an explanation, I believe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been waiting for that. No one's, offered that up. But we've had continuity of government plans in place before. The big one, Rex 84, that they found during the Iran-Contra hearings when Brooks was interviewing what's his name, Ollie North. They've never contained stuff like this, language like Blue Force Situational Awareness. So you have to ask yourself, why does that come up all of a sudden? As everything is right now. The FEMA, Continuity of Government Plan that we're talking about, the NDAA, the SIP, the HR 658, this NDRP. It's just all coming together all at once, Angie. It's like someone is working pretty damn hard, to meet an agenda.
They are working hard. They're working hard because they're running out of time. They know that, it's been 10 years since September 11th. A lot of us have been awake for many years and aware of what's actually going on, but a lot of people have not been. But what is happening is that there is a mass awakening taking place where people, the reason for it is that people are actually starting to become affected by all of these changes. You know, they're starting to take the hit financially. They're starting to deal with baloney at the airport where they cannot get on an airplane unless they subject themselves to a virtual strip search or, you know, a fondling by the TSA. You know, all these things are starting to wake people up, and that's how these systems go. You know, they're not friendly, they're not enjoyable to live with, and when people start getting affected by it, they start saying, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? So they are running out of time because the masses are awakening to what they're up to and what they're doing. And what's happening is it's a situation where for these people, they've committed so many crimes and they've done so many things wrong that for them, it's them or us. But for us, it's us or them. So there's going to be a conflict at some point. Because they want to push through these agendas. Otherwise, they fear that they're going to be held accountable for all of the misdeeds that they've done and their ill-gotten gains and, all the rest of it.
Yeah. And let's just stop just there real quick, Angie, for a second, because that's such a huge point. And people don't get that, but you're right on the head, right on the nail head with this. And because, again, as we've mentioned over and over, these are rich, families, very, very well-to-do. They're not just your millionaires and billionaires, but these are people that have, gazillions of dollars, billions. You get to the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, they've got trillions that are hidden in trust. But besides all that, they've got family names, they've got this aristocracy that they think they're above us all. And so do you think they want to be, saddled for the rest of history, knowing that their family was fingered, for the coup on America in 1934 or for any of the things for 9/11, any of this stuff that they've pulled off? They don't want to be caught for that. So, yeah, you're right. They will do anything. They will fight tooth and nail, folks, to keep from getting caught. And if you don't believe that, just think about what happened if you're the one that brought down the Twin Towers, if you were the one that tanked Wall Street. I mean, what would you do to save your ass? I mean, because these people will do anything.
Right.
So... yeah.
I mean, they've assassinated former presidents. They're responsible for coups in other countries and installing leaders in other countries, dictators. They're responsible for all kinds of war crimes. I mean, there's so much blood on their hands that they pretty much have to do this. Mm-hmm. They understand that we're living in the age of technology and that, there's just a time limit to how long they're going to be able to keep a lid on certain things. And it's a race against the clock. And it's going to come to a head at some point in time. I hope it doesn't. None of us want to see that happen. Nobody wants to live through, a war of any kind. But it appears that, all the things that they've done and all the preparations they're making and, all of the things that they've put into place are pointing to the fact that they're planning to go to war with the American people at some point in time. And that's it's disturbing. It's terribly disturbing.
It sounds crazy to even hear it come out of your mouth or my mouth or anyone's mouth. But when you look at the facts about the things we've been talking about, I mean, it's quite clear that that's what they're planning for. They're planning for something big, and they're planning it against we the people.
Right.
And so, very, very, very disturbing, folks. You've got to take note of all of this. And the thing is, don't keep it under your hat. You take it with you to work tomorrow. You tell your neighbors. You tell your coworkers. You tell everybody you can. It's Freedom Link Radio. We're talking with Angie Joseph, and we'll be back with more. Folks, make sure to check out Against the Wall with Mr. James Freeland, Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 8 to 10 Eastern, and Sunday 3 to 5 right here on Orion Talk Radio. It's the Freedom Link Radio Show. Joe Joseph, Tim Watts, and Mrs. Angie Joseph here tonight. And Angie is the person that's uncovered the FEMA continuity of government plan a few months back and sent our government into a tizzy, and they had to pull that document down off the web after Angie found it because apparently they thought it was top secret. And I'm just wondering if Obama might want to pull that executive order out of there after Angie went through and found that one on Saturday and kind of set the whole alternative news world on fire. Angie, thanks for hanging out for the second hour here tonight. You've got to see a lot of the criticism from a lot of the folks, and we were talking between the breaks that, if it didn't have that one word in there.
The peacetime stipulation.
Yeah, peacetime. I might be able to buy some of these people's arguments. Yeah, it's something for war. We always got to get ready for the worst. But the fact that they've got peacetime in there, that's the killer. I mean, that's the whole thing that just says all bets are off.
Yeah, it's the smoking gun. I mean, you can't argue that this is business as usual or it's no big deal. It's just in case of emergencies or anything like that. When you're putting a provision in there to implement these things during peacetime, your argument becomes invalid. So, and even now, I'm not a fan of Sean Hannity or Fox News. I just so happened to watch a clip from his show today talking about this. And even he said that, it appears that the White House did not expect that a lot of people would even notice this, which is one of the reasons, of course, why they would post it on a Friday afternoon.
Angie Joseph did.
Yeah, they posted it on a Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend.
For a drinking holiday, Angie, right. A drinking holiday.
Exactly. And it's just one of those many things that they do all the time. But we're hip to their game now. They've got a lot of people looking for these kinds of things when, what used to be a good move on their part because people would least expect it is no longer the case. And lucky for us, they're slow catching on. So.
Yeah, and shame on them for trying to pull it off the way they did. Again, because Obama, they signed the NDAA. That was all dead and done, in mid-November. And he hung on to that sucker. He hung on to it until December 31st, New Year's Eve, when he thought everybody would be good and hammered, and the next day, they'd have a hangover and there would be new news. And so, that was definitely calculated, that they held it till that time to sign it on New Year's Eve. But then they turn around, they try to do the same damn thing with this thing. Hey, what are the drinking holidays we got coming up? St. Patty's Day. Oh, we'll do that one. And, sure enough, right as rain, just before, late Friday night, that thing gets released, and they hope that it's going to go by. I mean, what do you suppose?
Nobody notices it. Yeah.
How many calls do you suppose somebody got on Sunday in the White House? Goes, God damn it, they got the story. It's Orion Talk Radio. It's that Angie Joseph chick again.
Oh, I don't know. Probably a lot. I mean, it was to the point where the White House press secretary had to address it today. He
laughed it off.
And he laughed it off. He blew it off and said it's business as usual. And look, this is why they're losing so much credibility with people. And this is, let me tell you something else. When the president does something like waits until late on New Year's Eve to sign something as huge as the NDAA that already has, all kinds of people in an uproar.
Mm-hmm.
When he does something like that and waits until, what would normally be a convenient time to sneak it in there and sign it, hope nobody notices, what that does is that reveals the character behind it. That not only did he sign it, but he did so in a really scumbag manner,
Yeah.
So it ends up, revealing their hand when they do these things. And I believe that this executive order was just a similar situation, where people are just sick and tired of this crap. And when they do it like that, people know that, look, you're trying to sneak this through. Why are you trying to sneak it through if there's nothing wrong with it? And it's just business as usual.
Yeah.
So it just contributes to, the discreditization of these people.
Yeah, it certainly validates suspicion of our government now when you see them go out of their way to, try to be duplicitous like this and to actually pull one over on us and to think that maybe he hadn't got mine. I mean, for crying out loud, Angie, I mean, who's to say that you don't find that on Saturday afternoon? I mean, who does find it? I mean, how long does it go before somebody realizes that? And again, I was joking a little bit ago, but I guarantee you on Sunday, there was a call at the White House. It was, God damn it. He didn't think it would get out that fast.
When I stumbled on it, it was about 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 a.m. Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning. And I read through it. I spent a couple of hours reading through it, looking up some stuff to try to get a good handle on what exactly it meant, what was going on. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't overreacting. I woke Joe up at 3 a.m. I said, you have to see this. He didn't appreciate it too much.
Wow, you got Snorlax up, huh?
I did. But it's, I believe it's that big of a deal. And for those that say, especially all the pundits out there, oh, he'll never abuse this kind of power.
Yeah, right.
He just needs it in the event of an emergency. Look, this kind of power has already been abused in this country.
Yep.
Look what happened when, all of the Japanese and Italians got sent to, concentration camps, essentially.
Well, there was a reason to send the Italians. They were pretty freaking unruly. I only say that because Angie's Italian. But no, you're right. It's a good point, Angie, so.
They've done this kind of thing before, just because the concentration camps that the Americans went to were not anywhere near what, the concentration camps were like in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. These people lost their businesses. They lost their livelihood. They lost their homes. They lost everything they had, everything.
Yep. Still uprooted.
Right.
They disrupt your entire life, and
right.
God only knows what they'll try this time around, but.
Right. And they, again, just like what the NDAA seeks to do, these people were taken and held without charge, without due process, until they were good and ready to let them go. So don't tell me it can't happen in this country. It already has.
Yeah. And when that last 1/3 of America wakes up, holy cow, is that going to be just a horrible epiphany for those people? I mean, because if I'm going to get an epiphany on what's going on in life, I'd like to have it a little beforehand, before all shit hits the fan, But these people, I'm sorry, they're going to get it at the bad time, when it's actually hitting the fan, and they're going to go, oh, these guys were right. Yeah. There is crap going on in this country. I mean, I do not envy them at that time. That's going to be a horrible time to be understanding that, things were not as you thought.
Right, exactly. And it's become obvious that our government, we don't run our government anymore. They're supposed to be there serving the people. They don't serve the people. As a matter of fact, they've gotten things quite confused. They believe that the people are there to serve them and, give money to them. That's just not how things were designed in this country.
Yeah, we've lost our whole political process. We are now back to essentially where our forefathers were, with taxation without representation, because we're getting taxed, but we're sure as hell not getting represented anymore. They're representing Merck and Pfizer and Big Pharma and Exxon, right, and all the Fortune 500 companies. But you and me and the little guy and everybody out there listening to this program, we are screwed.
Right.
So, I mean, there's no other way to parse that. It's taxation without representation. We're right back where we were 200 years ago.
That's right. That's right. And we're facing a situation where there's just no justice to be had. The entire system is so corrupted that you cannot, there's no redress of grievances. There's no justice. The Supreme Court keeps throwing out cases about the TSA, and JFK said it best. When you make peaceful revolution impossible, then you make violent revolution inevitable. When you leave people with absolutely no choice, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. and history will repeat itself when people don't pay attention.
Right.
It's Freedom Link Radio, Joe Joseph, Tim Watts, and Joe's better half, Angie Joseph here, and we're talking about the NDRP, the National Defense Resources Preparedness Plan that Angie uncovered on Saturday, and we'll have final segment coming up after this. Folks, you're listening to the Freedom Link program on the Orion Talk Radio Network. News and views beyond the mainstream media. You're not going to get this crap on ABC or Fox or CBS or any of the other ones. And I shouldn't say this crap, but this news, this information. And, we've got Angie Joseph with us here for the last quarter hour. And Angie, again, kudos to her for uncovering two of the biggest documents of the year. The FEMA Continuity of Government Plan, which was back in, wasn't that November, Angie?
November 18th, I think.
November 18th that came out, yep. And Angie was right on top of that one. And, of course, as soon as she found it, the government pulled it off the Internet immediately. And now this weekend, Angie came across the NDRP, which is an executive order from Obama, which came out, I think there's the 17th, and it's the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act. And you should read it, folks, because it's incredible, all the things that it says that Obama or the president, who's ever going to be in office, all the things that they can do. I mean, it is just one huge freaking land grab. If they want your bike, they want your tent, they want your whatever you got at home, it's theirs. I mean, they've got it all in ink right now.
Right.
And they claim it's for an emergency situation, but again, there's the one key word they put in there, and I was talking to Angie here, and I don't know why they did it, but it's in peacetime. So I don't know how they're thinking this whole bill is going to fly, because they can try to explain it away any way they want, Angie, but when they have that word peacetime in there, I'm sorry, I just can't get past this whole thing.
No, and it requires an explanation. First of all, he delegates presidential authority to many of the secretaries and advisors and all of these people that he's appointing and putting in charge of whole sectors of the economy and whole sectors of business. It's a complete takeover of food resources. Water resources will be under the Secretary of Defense. That's the military, controlling water, including your wells if they want it.
Wow.
It's a takeover of anything that has to do with medicine will all be under the direction of the Secretary for Health and Human Services, including medical facilities, hospitals, doctors' offices, drugstores, everything. I mean,
so Miss Sebelius would run it all, huh?
Right. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And not only run it all, energy too. I mean, everything. Not only would they be in charge of everything, but they're also in charge of rationing all of this out. So it is cause for concern, and everybody should be talking about it and talking to your families about it and your friends. And, we all have to be concerned about this. And, I don't care how much they try to minimalize it. It is a big deal, and it's something worth talking about.
Yeah. If you don't get this, you've got shit for brains, or you're just asleep. I mean, that's all there is to it. This is a huge executive order, unlike anything that we've had put through before. I mean, some of the things the ways they've been describing it, I mean, like this is the all-encompassing, act that's going to do it. I mean, beyond the Patriot Act, beyond the Military Commissions Act, beyond the Homegrown Terrorism Act, beyond all these things that have been put, forward on us, the NDA and everything. A lot of the critics are saying, wow, this baby is the atom bomb. So pay attention if you haven't paid attention to this, folks. It's worth taking a look at.
Let's not overlook the fact that in Part 5, Section 501 of this executive order, Obama also creates, he's actually put this into motion already. They're in the process of drafting and training people right now for this, but he also creates his own little private militaristic units called the National Defense Executive Reserve and the NDER, and that will be right from the order, the EO itself, that the National Defense Executive Reserve will be composed of persons of recognized expertise from various segments of the private sector and from government, to exclude federal full-time employees, for training, for employment in executive positions. That's executive level positions. He's giving them executive authority in the federal government in the event of a national defense emergency. And I've done a lot of research about this National Defense Executive Reserves, and anytime any one of the other authorities, such as the Secretary for Homeland Security, the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Transportation, anytime any one of them go to the president and say, we have an emergency and we would like an NDER unit out here to help us out, they get dispatched out. The Secretary of Homeland Security will approve it and dispatch out one of Obama's executive units. And I've done lots of research about this, and I can't really find anything that specifies exactly what they would be doing. I keep finding a lot of generalizations that they'd be out there to make sure that things get taken care of, like here it says that the unit is necessary to carry out the emergency program functions of the agency. But what does that mean? That's not very specific.
Yeah. And they've become masters at writing nebulous, bull crap. I mean, literally, they can write, 4 paragraphs of the most ambiguous crap, the stuff that they can twist any way they want, Ange.
Exactly. And the whole point of this whole game for them is to make things as vague as possible, because that leaves the door wide open for all kinds of use, misuse, interpretation, you name it. And, the thing to remember about this executive order is that it also incorporates slave labor.
Yeah, I know. That's the part everybody's missing right now.
Yeah, nobody's talking about that. Like these units, for example, it says right in the executive order that they're not going to be compensated. Not only that, but the people under them working for them, none of them will be compensated.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, folks, you can call it whatever you want, but if you're not compensated, I'm sorry, you're a slave. So the slave or volunteer, whichever way you want to look at it. But when you're conscripted into service, that is no longer volunteerism.
Yeah, under Section 502, consultants. Now, consultants are people from the NDER and also people under them that they train or that work for them, the people that compose these units. And it says the head of each agency, otherwise delegated functions under this order, is delegated the authority of the president. So they're given presidential authority to employ persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation, and to employ experts, consultants, or organizations. The authority delegated by this section may not be redelegated. So, I mean, I don't know. If you ask me, when you're employing somebody without compensation, that's slave labor. Am I crazy? Am I mistaken?
Well, let's see. That's either called an intern or slave labor. So you got it, Angie. We'll all be conscripted interns. That's what we'll be.
Right. And, in this takeover, this nationalization of industry, for whatever reason that they would decide to do it, part of the concern is that they can literally force factory owners to retool all their machinery, to get new equipment in there. If they want a car manufacturer to start manufacturing fighter jet parts, then it's up to them to pay for and retool their factory to start manufacturing something totally different. And it's up to the president to tell people in this country that they also have to work to make sure that the needs of the military and the populace are being met. So I don't understand why nobody's really talking about that aspect of it. I think that's probably as troubling as anything else in this executive order.
Well, it was interesting when you discovered this on Saturday, and then by the time we got the podcast up, and kind of watched this thing go viral. But even more so today, you could just see the number of hits that were going up. People were posting stuff on YouTube and on Facebook all throughout the day. So I could only hope that this increases throughout the week, and that people wake up and finally say enough is enough. And then maybe, look back, folks. Look back at some of the other things that have passed since November. I mean, 2011 was bad enough the way that was, but I mean, if you just look at from November on, my gosh, I mean, everything points to a police state that's coming in this country. I mean, our government is preparing for something, and it's not something that looks to be pleasant.
That's right. And when we did the podcast about this executive order and went over the whole executive order, we read it, broke it down. What we talked about is the authority that each one of these things in the executive order gives the president to do. The authority, he's got the authority to do this certain thing or that certain thing. Does it mean he's going to do it? No. Who knows what he's going to do or when he's going to do it or how he's going to do it. The point is he's got the authority to do these things, whether, it's not alarmist. It might sound hysterical, extremist, whatever you want to call it. The truth of the matter is he still has the authority to do these things, whether he uses it or not. And he shouldn't have that. Nobody should.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Great point to end on, Angie. Angie Joseph, again, she's the one that discovered the NDRP, the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act. And thank you, Angie, for all of the work you do. I mean, just absolutely incredible stuff. You and Joe are, just such a good source for Orion Talk Radio. So thanks for being with me tonight, Angie.
We're doing what we should be doing.
Thank you, girl. You keep up the good work. And thanks to you all for listening.